Sicily, July 19th, 1943. The 50th Durham Light Infantry Division pushes doggedly up the eastern coastal road. They are supported closely by Sherman III's of the 4th Armored Brigade. Their mission, to relieve the tired paratroopers defending the Primasole Bridge. The men of the DLI have been in near constant contact with the enemy since the beach landings just a few days ago. It's only been 24 hours since they received orders from Montgomery himself to move with all haste to relieve the beleaguered defenders at the bridge. However, since landing, they've not received their dedicated transport vehicles as they were unable to come to shore due to limited boat and landing craft space for which tanks and artillery were prioritized. What it means for the exhausted infantrymen is that they will be making this 24-mile trek on foot in the brutal 100-degree-plus weather of Sicily in July. They began their journey making significant ground with light resistance. However, at the village of Lentini, about halfway to their objective, they find the streets full of rubble and thus are forced to slow their advance. In the rugged hills to the north of the village lies a delaying force of Italian riflemen, ordered to delay the Durham Light Infantry until the airborne troops at the bridge can be properly dealt with by the Fallschirmjäger and the bridge can be blown. Knowing that the fall of Mussolini is imminent, many Italian soldiers on Sicily, disillusioned with fascism themselves, long to return home. Morale amongst the Italian infantry divisions is at an all-time low, and many surrender or desert at the first opportunity. However, the men who make up this particular rifle platoon have been chosen to carry out this rearguard action specifically for their grim determination and dedication to the cause of fascism. In today's game of Chain of Command, a platoon of Durhams will suffer a -1 modifier to their platoon morale as a result of their exhaustion as they attempt to clear these rugged hills of resistance. They are rated regular and have been allocated 12 points of support, which must include a Sherman III from the 4th Armored Brigade. The Italian rifle platoon will suffer no such drains on morale and are rated as regular as well. They will receive 6 points of support. All support units today will be taken from the excellent Primasole Bridge campaign book from Valhalla Games and costed accordingly with the Chain of Command rulebook and supplements. It's a hot day in Sicily, and it's about to become even hotter in this bolt action battle report. Post-jump-off phase, the Durhams were not able to make as much ground before the Italian patrols pushed them back to the very rear of the table. So they will be starting way back at the back. They've got a long way to go until they can get to those hills to hopefully push out the Italians. The jump-off points are as such: the dead horse near the tree, near the corner of the edge of the village of Lentini, an olive grove in the center of the map, and off to the right flank in these woods, another jump-off point placed. Hopefully they'll be able to get into this dry creek bed, but either way, it's going to make for sparse cover and rough going before they can get to the edge of the mountain. The Italians have fared pretty well in their patrol phase. They've placed one of their jump-off points on the hill to the east, one on the large hill to the west, making for a perfect ambush position. They've also managed to place one back in their deployment zone in this olive grove. As a result of that terrible patrol phase, they're going to have tons and tons of open ground to cover before they can even reach the summit of the hills to the north of the town. This is going to really favor the Italians, as they'll be able to just pour machine gun fire down onto that open ground. A few notes on terrain. We have a lot of hard cover on this map, particularly up here in the hills. The hills are going to count as rough going, which means that they'll have to subtract at least 2 from every normal movement and 1 inch from every tactical movement. The paths that run up and down the hills can be counted as broken ground, which will allow for normal and tactical movement but no flat out. The cactus that surrounds the hills is going to be extremely rough going. The dried creek bed will provide some cover from ground fire, but won't do much to protect them from fire from the top of the hill. The stone walls around Lentini will serve as hard cover and good enough protection for long-range weapons, but if the British want to win this scenario and capture the patrol marker at the end of the table, they're going to have to push out beyond the safety of the walls of Lentini and move into the hills. They can't very easily drive a tank up the road because they'll probably get ambushed from either side by Italian anti-tank weapons. So it's really up to the infantry to get up to the hills and push the Italians out. By the way, we've chosen support today and not told each other, and we've also chosen not to really tell you, so it's going to be just as much of a surprise to you as it is to us. The only thing that Chris is aware of is that there will be a Sherman tank coming on the table. The current morale for the Durhams is 9, but they're suffering a -1 because of their physical exhaustion and because of the heat, so that actually puts them at an 8. The Italians rolled a 6 for their morale, which sets theirs to a lofty 11. So the Durhams, even with all their support, have a ton of work cut out for them. The Italians have excellent terrain, they have excellent morale, and they also have excellent positioning, so it's looking like it's going to be a tough haul for the Durhams. British Phase 1. Okay, so out of the gate we have a double phase. There's 2 2s and a 3, so we'll go ahead and play this phase and we'll see what the British bring onto the table. The Durhams make their way onto the table with the first squad of infantry using the 3, and the junior leader is going to put them into Overwatch. So they'll at least have a solid look from their position over to that hill, hoping that they see some Italians pop up there on the ridge at some point and that they can lay down a decent amount of covering fire. With the roll of the 2, we brought on a second squad. I've decided that since we get a double phase, the Durhams just have to get a move on since they've got so much ground to cover. So we're bringing all the squads on that we can right now and getting them in position to hopefully on the next turn start making some ground. So with the next 2, bring on our other squad. Finally, with my last 2, the third squad appears near the other squad, except they're going to be over on their right flank, out in the woods, on the far left flank of the table. Except the third squad didn't show up. Unbeknownst to the Durhams, the Italians had laid an artillery barrage in their rear, causing some confusion and causing some of the squads not to even be able to make it on the board. So they will have to wait until the next phase to even try to come on. This is British Phase 2 for the double phase. I think we're going to get another double phase here. Unfortunately not. 2 chain of command points, 2 3s, and a 2. This presents me with some challenges because I could either try to move up my tank support and maybe get some supports on the table, or we could start just trying to make ground. With the 3, I decided to bring in my Sherman tank. He's going to be supporting the second squad, and he is going to be put on Overwatch, just watching the hills for any kind of Italian resistance that might show up. With the other 3, we actually have Squad 3 finally showing up, and this time, rather than advance, they're going to go into Overwatch and just try to cover the advance of Squad 2. Turns out it was just only a slight delay. And on the roll of the 2, with the blow of the whistle, and with the Sherman tank protecting their flank and covering the mountain in front of them, the second squad of the DLI are moving out. They've got a long way to go. And it's finally the Italian phase. So, I know Chris has been patiently waiting here to roll his phase. And what are we looking at? 3, 5, 5, 3, and 1? Okay, excellent. All right, so we will tell you what Chris did after his phase. All right, phase 3, Chris's phase, sees the Italian defenders start to show up and go into Overwatch. I guess we ran out of Overwatch markers, but oh well. This squad of machine gunners and rifles came in on the hill to the east, and they have set up in Overwatch directly looking down on these British troops here. So I guess they're just waiting for them to open fire, and they're waiting for them to open fire. So whoever does open fire will get fired on by the other team's Overwatch. The Elefantino light anti-tank gun came in as well and positioned itself on the east hill, looking down the road. However, as far as I know, it's not currently in Overwatch. So it is just staring down the road, waiting for that Sherman tank to do something. And meanwhile, on the western hill, the other section of machine gunners have set up. British phase, third phase for the British, phase 4 for the game. I don't know, yeah. I'm liking my rolls so far. Let's see what we got. Okay, 1-6, that wasn't great. But lots of 1s to play with. And a 3 as well. Well, with that phase, we see the first casualties for the Durhams. As second squad moved out into the open to reach the hill, they were fired on by the Italians at the top. However, before that Overwatch could be sprung, the Durhams in squad 3 back here in the woods opened up with their Bren guns and rifles and managed to wound the junior leader for the Italians mildly, and also managed to kill a couple of men. However, the Italians returned in kind with crippling machine gun fire, 11 hits on this squad of Durhams, knocking out the junior leader and killing off 3 men. So, bad start for the Durhams for sure. Rolls on the bad things chart turned out pretty poorly for the Durhams, knocking them down to a morale of 6. So almost breaking their morale before the game even really gets started. The Italians rolled a 1, which means nothing happened. So must have been an unpopular junior leader. Okay, so Chris has rolled his dice. He's got a 3, 2 1s, a 5, and a 6. So that's what I like to see, a limited roll for the Italians. So the Italian phase was pretty rough for the Durhams. Crippling machine gun fire was enough to reduce the squad of the second squad of Durhams down to 1 man and their wounded commander. And a shot from the Elefantino anti-tank gun was enough to send him running, dragging his wounded sergeant back behind the stone wall. This is really bad news because with all the morale rolls for the team wiped out and the team breaking, this pushes the Durhams down to a morale of 4. So this game may be pretty short, but as things stand, the Italians still have their morale at 11, and they have put a blistering hurt on the Durhams, who might have been a little bit too eager to get out into the open and rush the hill with that single squad. So the Durhams have rolled a 4, 2 3s, and a 1, so we're going to have to see if we can untangle this situation that we found ourselves in. Terrible, terrible phase for the Durhams. Sherman tank moved forward, attempted to fire its main gun at the perpetrators up on the hill. However, it did next to no damage, even though the shot landed near enough to cause Chris to have to roll for hits. Nobody died. Nobody was shocked. I tried to bring in my senior leader to rally off shock off of these guys and get them out of the way and get them unpinned. However, it was not to be. The pregame barrage left him confused in the backfield, so he hasn't shown up. I also tried to bring in another support with my other 3, and that also yielded no fruits. So it's looking really, really bad for the Durhams. Chris gets another phase. He still has this unit on Overwatch, and the unit on the hill is still doing damage. He also has in reserve the rifle section, which hasn't even shown up yet. So this game is looking rough, just right from the get-go. It's looking really bad. All right, it's gonna be another phase for the Italians. Chris is looking forward to doing some more damage, I'm sure. And right now, really the name of the game is just getting the morale down to nothing. Just really making the Durhams just like not able to function. And that's gonna be his salvation here on this hot day in Sicily. Go for it. What'd you roll? Double phase?
Double phase.
Oh my God. Double phase for Chris. All right, Chris's first phase of his double Italian phase, seeing a firefight break out over here on his right flank on the eastern hill. He decided to open fire with the AT gun, the elephant gun, and use an HE shell to fire into this squad that was holding the wall north of the village. The squad, before that happened, triggered their overwatch to fire back, which in turn triggered Chris's overwatch. So he was able to fire with all the weight of his machine guns at the Durhams, causing 2 casualties, knocking the Bryn down to just one single firer who is going to be suffering a loss when he's trying to fire. However, the Durhams did fire back at the Elephantino and managed to kill 1 person. However, I don't think it was necessarily a fair trade. The Elephantino gun then fired and caused even more shock on both teams, hitting with all 3 of its HE points. Not great for me. It's so funny because like before this scenario, Chris was like really worried that he wasn't gonna have that much to defend with, but the terrain, my decision to be aggressive over here in the open, and his pre-game barrage have really served to help the Italians out and bring the Durham's morale down pretty low. So now we're gonna go to his double phase, to the second phase of his double phase. All right, so double phase for the Italians, here it comes. Are we gonna get a triple phase? Oh my God.
Yes.
So that's 2 double phases in a row for Chris. I would say this is gonna be a death knell for the Durhams, but we're just gonna have to see how it goes. I've got no more Overwatch, so really Chris is gonna run the board. So stick around for the bloodbath. All right, end of Chris's phase sees these guys looking a little bit more pinned. The junior leader takes a point of, or he takes a wound. He's still standing, still shouting orders, but he's less effective. He's been minorly wounded. However, a roll on the chart pushed me down to a morale of 3, which means I only have 3 dice to roll now. That fire came from this machine gun section up here on the hill, and just more crippling fire from the Elephantino gun. Who would have thought that the Elephantino gun would cause that much HE damage on these poor Durhams down here? And then the leader, the senior leader came on last phase. I don't know if we covered that, but he took off more shock from this squad. You can see him kind of standing off down the hill there. And he put his fire onto this squad, causing even more shock on them as well. So the Durhams just taking a pelting, and Chris has another phase. So I'm kind of the mind that I hope that it ends at this point because it's just too much, or that at least I get a phase to maybe try to fire a Sherman at some of these Italian defenders. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and roll for Chris's 3rd phase in this chain of command phases for him. All right, go for it. No double phase. Pushes his chain of command dice up a point, so he's got 4 now, chain of command dice. And another turn for him to have his way with these DLI infantry. All right, let's see how it goes. At the end of Chris's 2nd phase, we see more deaths for the Durham. The fire from the Elephantino gun up here on the hill, in conjunction with the machine guns, caused the Bryn team to be wiped out in the first squad. The squad in the village is now pinned, and they are having a lot of trouble. Really, well, I mean, we haven't got to do anything. So really, it's just been one kind of bullet after another. So they are... They aren't going to be able to really do anything until the junior leader can get them unpinned, or we can get a senior leader on the table. It's still the first turn, so the pregame barrage still is going to affect us, whatever we try to bring on. So it's looking really, really rough. Meanwhile, on the western hill, on the left flank of the Durhams, this squad in the woods has started to take more and more fire. Chris brought on his rifle section, which fell in line beside the machine gunners, and they put fire down, causing the leader to be killed in that the squad on the left flank. So That puts the Durham's morale down to 1. So really it's just waiting for that final blow to call it, and I'm only going to get 2 dice to roll for this next phase. But we are going to play it. We're going to use the last little bit of morale that we have to see if we can get some shots, at least on the Italians. But it is looking like there's going to be a massive delay in reaching the Primasole bridge today. So really my 2 dice for the Durhams with their morale of 1. And okay, 3 and 4, not so bad. We are going to attempt to bring in that junior leader, and we'll see if we can even maybe bring in another support unit. Coming out of the end of my phase, there just really isn't much to say. Tried to bring a senior leader on, but he is still being delayed by the barrage in the backfield. Italian mortars coming down hard at the starting line for this. So all that was left to do was take the tank and start firing into the mountainside, catching this rifle team out in the open on the bald-faced hill here, managing to wound one who was the leader. That's right. So the leader is now wounded, and he will not recover till the end of the turn. And that's actually a bad thing, so we got to roll that.
That's very good.
5 for a junior leader wounded. Is that a -2? -1. Okay. So moving the Italian morale down to 10, and hopefully diminishing their resolve and their love of fascism just a little bit. All right. Well, Chris is going to play his next phase, and there's a good chance that this could be the death knell for the Durhams. Are you going to end my misery, Chris?
Finally.
Our lads are tired, sir. We're ready to go home. All right. So we're going to play that phase, and we'll see what happens. All right. Playing Chris's next phase. All he's got to do is put the Durhams down 1 morale point, and they will retreat. All right. So 5. That puts you up to a 5 on the chain of command dice, which is nice. And then you've got a lot to play with there. So, all right, we'll see how it goes. So to end Chris's phase, fire from the mountain, the rifle section, pouring fire over into the town of Lentini, as well as fire from the machine guns of the men on the East Hill, was all that was needed to put the final bit of shock and break these men that were holding the north end of the town. So they are heading out, reducing the British morale to 0, thus ending the game. This game was really interesting. I didn't expect it to be so disastrous for the British. I definitely knew it wasn't going to be an easy task to take out the Italians, but the morale just was not there for us today. That's the thing about chain of command. Sometimes the side with the most support and the most, big toys like tanks and whatnot don't necessarily win out, because at the end of the day, it's about getting men to do what you want them to do, and sometimes they don't want to do that. So I really like chain of command. I like all the friction that's present in the game. And yeah, I would say all in all, this was a pretty good game today, even though I got torched. The triple phase did not help. But the Italians needed all the help that they could get, and at the end of the day, I think that it was a pretty good game. So we'll be playing more games like this in the future, I hope. Tell me what you think about this new format. Tell us in the comments, and thank you for watching this episode of Bolt Action Battle Reports.